Um, Thank you for being here today. I realize some of you have come long distances, and so particularly grateful for you undertaking this journey. You've come on a great day. The colors are spectacular, and so I hope you took time as you came to enjoy what you're seeing. One of the things that I always feel when we gather with Teacher Mentors Abroad, it's like a reunion. So there's this abrazo, saludos, there's a warmth of expression here. And so I hope you feel that. If it doesn't come naturally to you, I hope you at least feel it and receive it. And we are grateful that you are here. This is year 17 since Teacher Mentors Abroad began. And it began as a result of this place. St. Paul's Leesdale had sent a youth team to the Dominican Republic to start a kids camp at the invitation of this pastor, engineer, lawyer, gentleman by the name of Jose Lopez. And he is actually now a member of our board. He is the fellow that we are trying to reach there he is. So, bienvenido, Jose. Nos alegra que estás presente con nosotros. So Jose does speak English, and he is going to be able to be part of these proceedings as on a virtual basis. So 17 years ago, this team goes to the Dominican Republic, and they are working at a kids camp. But it so happens that the people, there were all women who were doing the snack program for the kids. And they see these Canadians using strategies. Two of them were teachers, by the way, how they organize the kids, how they give directions, all of that kind of thing that a teacher does, whether they're in the classroom or at a kids camp. And at the end of the week, the teachers that were there came up to me and said, Nancy, do you think it's possible for your teachers to come and teach us these strategies? Because we saw them using strategies that would be really valuable to us in our classrooms. And so, I mean, I'm not a teacher. I didn't know. I said, I'll go back and check. And there were all kinds of teachers in this congregation. And so one of them, right here, Sandy Cole. So they said, sure, we'll be glad to go. And so that following summer, there was a team that represented the cross-section of an education community here. So there was teachers, there was a principal, there was somebody who would have been a custodian, people with the library. We had people with administrative skill set. Marianne Herma was on that initial team as well. Put your hand up, Marianne, so that we know that you're here. And so they went and they did these workshops on kind of basic learning things, different multiple intelligences, right? Some basic literacy skill sets. And at the end of the week, those teachers said, you've given us a great appetizer. Now you have to come back and give us the main meal. So that happened the following year. In 2006, Juan Pablo Liriano, sube la mano, there he is at the back. So now also a member of the board of directors. Juan Pablo was on that team in 2006. Janet, were you there? Also 2000, put your hand up. Those folks were all part of the 2006, team. And at that point, it was like, oh, okay, this is bigger than what we thought. Teacher Mentors Abroad became a not-for-profit, non-faith-based, independent organization, but thankfully still has the support from TMA, from St. Paul's, that gives us their facilities for use and their tech supports, and it's just been fantastic. But at that point, when Teacher Mentors Abroad was incorporated, it was, okay, if this is going to have sustainability, then it's going to need a different approach. It's going to need mentoring. It's going to need empowering of individuals who were describing themselves as agents of change. And so those agents of change are the reform members of education in the Dominican Republic. So that's where the story starts. And what we see is that it has, initially it was one site, where Jose Lopez is, Juan Pablo and Betty Ann. You'll hear more about that during the program part, but they then said, we're involved with work in the interior of the country in Santiago. We want TMA to come here. And so that happened in 2015, but there was a whole process that led up to that second site. And as of this past summer, 4 sites now in the country. And you will hear, again, that will be, those are the details you'll hear about during the program portion at 1 o'clock. We are looking at over 3,700 Dominican educators that to date have been part of this program. We have seen not only lots of commitment in the Dominican Republic, but we've had over 100 Canadian educators, representative of 7 different school boards from across Ontario, been on this team. So we're talking about an impact that is not just, several thousand educators, but we're talking about tens or perhaps hundreds of thousands of students that are impacted as a result of this multiplier effect that is going out. So for me, it's exciting. I know I'm seeing smiles on people's faces, that have been part of teams. And so what is the common denominator for both the Canadian and the Dominicans is that you have these educators that are eager and committed to share and receive best practices because they want quality education for students. So that benefit comes back to Canada as well in terms of what it looks like in the classrooms of those teachers. So either you received by an email the annual report. There are a few copies at the back, but I think we're all good readers, sufficient to read these stories and testimonials, so I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do is highlight some of the significant things that we saw happen in this past year. And I guess the one thing that really stands out for me is that expression and that demonstration this year of what we have always wanted. This mentoring that has now risen right to the top in terms of the Dominican mentors now becoming the presenters, the designers of the workshops, and they did that with a sense of confidence that was, quite remarkable. You'll hear about that in some of the testimonials and certainly in the program this afternoon. But they do see themselves as agents of change. That's exactly what they call themselves. And so here they were, not just doing this for the first time, but at new sites, places they'd never been to. And so that was really a really quite remarkable and satisfying. There was this kind of gratifying side, like, okay, this is what we set out to do, and we're seeing the results of that. Another first is that typically Juan Pablo Liriano and Betty Ann, who are sitting here at the back, and myself are in the country to provide some logistical support to the teams at these 2 main sites. And for the first time this year, none of the 3 of us were in the country. And so it was just like, what's this going to be like? But the Dominican leadership really stepped up in terms of logistics. In fact, I was in Dominican Republic in March, and we had a meeting. Jose Lopez and I met with one of the folks in La Vega, and they were saying to us, trust us, let us show you what we can do. And so we did, and they were just outstanding in terms of how they came through in terms of that logistics. The other thing, we introduced a new element to our board meetings. So, we have 2 online meetings a year and 2 in person. But with the pandemic, we had nothing in person. And so you had many directors who really only knew each other from a screen and had little knowledge of each other. So we introduced this kind of educational presentation where at each board meeting we ask a director to share their story. How did you come to TMA? What was it about us that, made you say yes when you were invited to join? And tell us about your background. So it's been pretty remarkable to hear these stories. I think we've heard from, Doug Wilson, and, in some cases they go right back to their youth in terms of some of the things that they experienced or they appreciated about education and what brought them here. Georges Boiset, former Canadian ambassador to the Dominican Republic, as an honorary member. He shared his experiences there and, again, what made him say yes to TMA. So Abigail Falcon, I think, was our most recent presenter, comes to Canada from Ecuador. internal auditor with Deloitte and Citibank, and finds herself in this little teacher mentors abroad. I'm sure we frustrate her to no end sometimes, but she's patient and she has great suggestions for us. And we are grateful, for that kind of service. So what we see is there's this breadth and depth of experience and skill on the board that you, as supporters, you're well served by this board of directors. And so I'm grateful for them. And our honorary members, we have 3 honorary members, one of whom is with us here today, Laura Elliott. So Laura Elliott and I go back 25 years when I was a trustee and she was superintendent of education for Brock Township. And then, she goes on to become a superintendent at Thames Valley in London, director of education for Thames Valley District School Board. And so thank you, Laura, for accepting that role as honorary member. We have 2 other honorary members who are unfortunately not able to be here with us today. Pauline Lang, former director of education for Durham, and just somebody who has been key in terms of our strategic plans and just good guidance and counsel for us. And also, we have Georges Boiset, the former ambassador, who is unable to be here. They each provide a really key role in just kind of helping us consider things that we might not have. I mean, they come from such a broad experience in terms of their professional work. And so we, again, are exceedingly grateful for them. We have also a first this year, which is I had a meeting with the Director of Continuing Education Department at the Ministry of Education in Dominican Republic, and they suggested, or they asked, if we would create one is they wanted a symposium, which is happening in March with Bev Friedman in terms of pedagogical walks and understanding what is it that you're looking for as a director or as a principal when you're going through a school? What are those best practices? But now it's expanded that they are talking about a strategic alliance. So we're actually having discussions. Denise Taylor-Edwards, if you want to put your hand up, Denise, from our program committee, and Juan Pablo and myself have been having Zoom calls with 2 collaborating organizations that we've worked with in the past, Poveda and Instituto Superior de Pedro Poveda, a training institute, and the ministry around what if we do have a strategic alliance? What will that look like? What will this agreement offer? The other thing is that as of today, later on during this meeting, we will have the election of officers. And following that, half of our board will be Spanish speaking. That's huge for an organization that deals internationally in a Spanish-speaking country, not only from a communication standpoint, but from a perspective. So even when we're talking about, say, a contractual agreement with organizations down there, just, brings a perspective that we might not appreciate if we have only worked within the Canadian experience. So those are key things that I think are of huge benefit to teacher mentors abroad. I also want to acknowledge some outstanding work by Adrian Grant. And Adrian, I don't think you are here yet. Okay, so Adrian is our former Director of Communication and Donor Relations who did work with us for 2 years prior to the pandemic, and really helped us get on a very solid financial basis, which was exceedingly helpful for us in the pandemic when anything we were doing was online. So there was online training that was happening, and we could make those decisions in confidence, knowing we actually had money in the bank to do that. And it allowed us, once the pandemic eased up, that we could plan, program committee was able to plan knowing that we would be able to deliver whatever program decisions were made. So that was a significant issue for us. I want to express my gratitude on behalf of the board to 2 retiring members this year, Janet Giberson. Janet, take a bow, please. Janet has served as a director, as co-chair of program committee. She's a veteran team participant and team leader. And she's one of those people that, on the spur of the moment. So this year, our Santo Domingo team had a late cancellation by one of the team members. And Janet says, oh, I think I can make it work. I'm traveling here and I've got this coming, but I've got that week that is available. Do you want me to come? That's the kind of commitment that we have. And, gracias de todo corazón. Thank you with all my heart, because I have nothing more to offer except this huge gratitude and appreciation and just admiration for the work that you have done and the enthusiasm with which you are doing it. So she is not staying for another term, but she is continuing with the program committee, and so we are grateful that you are staying in that role. The other person who unfortunately can't be here today and is retiring as honorary member is Pauline Lang. And there will be a fuller expression of our gratitude for her during the program. But she has been key in terms of our strategic planning and just guiding us in ways that we probably would not have been able to do as well or as fully. So, finally, to each one of you, I mean, we wouldn't be here without not only you as committee members, as board members, as team members, present and past, as donors, small or big, each one of you, organizations that are representative of service clubs and community groups. Thank you for the commitment that you have made. Thank you for your willingness to journey with us to this point, and we look forward to you journeying with us and us with you in all that is ahead. There's an exciting chapter of Teacher Mentors Abroad's life that is ahead, so stay with us, and we will be absolutely certain to deliver and be in this work for the long haul with you. So thank you very much. Gracias de todo corazón. Something, I think I jumped way ahead of myself. But this is not uncommon. I was only supposed to say hello and turn this over to Doug. And I'm ahead on the agenda by, I don't know, 3 steps. But Doug, the board is very patient with me. So far they haven't voted me out. But Doug was actually supposed to do the welcome call to order. Okay, now you know what you're really dealing with in this organization. But forgive me, please. Okay, Doug, can I bring you up? Just ask you to come up. Thank you.
I'm rather hurt by that. There's no question. You did a far better job than I would have. It was interesting when Nancy started speaking, one of the things that caught my attention, she said, "This is so Canadian." And I was talking to Ron and Marianne Herma, old people and friends. And beforehand saying, I've had the good fortune to have a home in warm country, but that warm country is suffering. And I've become rather obsessed with the political atmosphere of the United States. I'm not going to talk about it. God, we don't need to ruin a happy day. But thinking of that sort of American culture, I really did expect that I would run up on the stage and throw kisses, and there'd be pyrotechnics behind me, and then launch into some bizarre, I don't think I'll be bizarre, tirade on something. And because that seems to be the way everybody performs in the US. So I'm going to be typically Canadian and probably rather dry. But I can't, I'm so happy that Nancy did that, because Nancy has the history all at her fingertips. I've been on the board, and I don't know the number of years, but maybe 7 or 8. But I have not had the privilege of going to the DR. And I regret that, but sometimes life throws things in the way of the freedom to do that, and I've just been the way. And I also apologize for being one of two people who look like we're too neurotic to be out in public, but truth is, my office over the last few months has periodically had the disease make its way through person by person. We're currently all healthy as far as I know, but I never know on Monday who can show up and who can't. Fortunately, it's not a huge office and we have lots of space, so we've been able to handle it. But I'm extra sensitive that for your safety as well as my own that I put this on. All my co-shoppers in Zayres this morning, most of them kind of looked at me as if I were something else, I don't know what, but it's just a precaution. So I don't really need to introduce anybody. That's been done. That's a good thing. I do have, I don't know whether there's a fight on for the position of secretary, because I have two agendae. One which says that Lucy Thrain is going to do it. And then a more recent one that was handed to me saying that Margaret Muller would act as secretary.
Margaret had unexpected surgery 2 nights ago, and so Lucy's covered.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. I just was very confused. I've been sitting there making notes trying to see how I would address that. And I don't think we have to have a motion in the formal way. So this is the beginning of the AGM business component of the meeting. And each year that I've been asked to do this, the one thing to save embarrassment for people is just a brief explanation that when we got our letters patented and drafted our bylaws, et cetera, as much as everybody in this room is critical to the mission that's happening, only a few of you have a vote. The way we structured the corporation, and it is a corporation, it's a charitable, not-for-profit, both of those. And only the board members are also the members of the organization, so that only board members will be asked to put their hands up to speak to any motion or resolution that we need to do. So the rest of you can work out another time. And so I guess I start with the annual report. But I have a feeling that's a stroke off. Am I correct? All right. All right. That was actually a fascinating chat, as Nancy always is, at some thousands of miles an hour. But I need somebody to move the adoption of that report. Sandy, seconder, all in favor. Janet's the seconder, sorry. All in favor? Okay, it's carried. Any objections? No. Now I'm going to turn it over to our controller, accountant, bookkeeper, responsible person for our money, Abigail, and give her a chance to go through the financials for you. As I've always, I think, referred to is my astonishment every time I look at this and I look at our budget and I look at the revenues. And I just, I don't know whether it was Churchill or whoever it was made the point of sort of never has so much been done by so few with so little. It really is a tiny budget, and as you'll experience today, again, I'm sure through the other presentations, the impact is notable in the DR from this tiny little organization. So it's a pretty amazing process. Abigail, come on up.
Thank you, Dar. Hello, everybody. Well, we're going to watch for the financial statements. So, first of all, I want to thank Desmond Wilson, who is our accountant, and he prepared the financial statements to be reviewed today. So, well, we are going to start with the statement of financial position. So we can see here the current assets. We have cash, which represents the banking account for $46,333. And we also have prepaid expenses for $1,339, and which represents mainly prepaid insurance and subscriptions. For liabilities, we only have accounts payables for $500, which represents professional services, and unrestricted net assets, which is an accumulated profit year over year. It is for $47,172, totaling $47,672, which represents an increase of 4% compared to the year 2021. On the next page, we have the statements of change in net assets. So we can appreciate here that we started the current year with $45,000, 187, and we had an excess of revenues over expenses for $1,985, totaling the balance in the year ended of August 31st, 2022, of $47,172. It represents an increase of 4% compared to the previous year, 2021. And regarding the statement of operations in the next page, we have here the revenues and expenditures for the current year. So we can appreciate on donations. Under donations, we have $38,084, which came principally mainly from individuals' donations, foundations, organizations like this church, and contributions for team members for the República Dominicana teams. And under expenditures, we have different categories. The more remarkable are travel, program development and supplies, and professional fees. For travel, we have $15,802, which represents the expenditures for travel for team members to the different programs in República Dominicana. And we have, in the second in important is program development and supplies for $6,404, which is money expensed on the different programs in Santiago and Santo Domingo. Thank you, Nancy. And professional fees, mainly for web, communication, director, bookkeeper, and accounting, for totaling $7,505. We can appreciate a notable increase from for this year 2022 compared to the 2021 in e-program development and supplies, because the 2021 we didn't have programs in person, only online, and this year we had in person. And in addition, the travel, because the past year we didn't have any travel to República Dominicana. And the total, the excess of revenues over expenditures for this current year is $1,985, which represent a decrease of 78% compared to the previous year, because we spent more this year due to the activities that we performed. Okay, the next page is related to cash the cash flow. It explains that where the money came from and where it was used to. So in general, as an overall picture, we can see that we received more than we expended, we used. So in that terms, we can see only positive numbers on the under the 2022 year, only positive amounts. It means that we more receive than we spend. So it totals the cash at the end of the year of 46,333, which is the money that we have on the banking account actually now. So, and finally, we have 2-3 pages for the notes to financial statements. In the first part, it states the nature of operations. It explains that TMA is a non-profit organization, when it was founded, and what is the business that TMA is dedicated to. The second point talks about the significant accounting policies. And finally, in the last page, we can see the financial instruments, which explains the risks that TMA is exposed to. So when you have a time, you can read a little bit. So it's a kind of dense reading, but it's what the accounting is. So if you have any question, please. Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you. If you have any other question? No questions? Okay. If you don't have more questions, please, we move to approve the financial statements.
My notes indicate that Abigail has moved the motion to adopt the financial statements. Do I have a seconder? Janet? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you. One last thing. In the various titles that I gave to Abigail, I didn't happen to mention that she is the treasurer of the organization as well. Now we have what we go through on an annual basis as well is sort of a renewal of directors whose terms have expired, or the addition of new directors. As Nancy's already said, Janet is retiring. I think the kindest word, because everything else sort of sounds like you're sick or something, and I think probably taking a break from what has been a very important career for this organization, and so she won't be standing for re-election. I have a list of people who have agreed. The first is Abigail has agreed to stand for 2 years. Bev Friedman, who's not here, but I can assure you has given her consent. Denise is here and given her consent for a further 2 years. And I'm the longest in the tooth of probably anybody in the building, and I'm looking at it on a year-by-year basis now, so I've agreed to stand for another year. And so if I could have a motion to nominate that slate as I set out. Juan Pablo. Seconder, Nancy. All in favor? Those opposed? Then we have formalized the slate of directors for the next year. There was one other thing that Nancy had indicated, that although she stole the time to do it, passed it on to me because she overlooked just pointing out that we have regrets from two of our directors, Wayne Louie and Bev Friedman, who aren't here today. And I don't know if there's any other business that anyone would like to bring up for the business component of the meeting. Then I will declare the meeting terminated.